Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar topic will be focused around workflows and forms management and how it can bring efficiencies back to your business processes and organization workflows and make your DB2 data work smarter for you. And in doing so, eliminate business efficiencies and how your organization collects and updates data in your ERP and databases. My name is Greg Schmidt. I'll be the presenter for today's webinar titled IBM DB2 Data, Make It Work Smarter. The data harbored in your DB2 databases is truly the lifeblood of your IBM applications, lending itself to, client server solutions, business intelligence, and other critical functions within inside of your organization. However, leveraging that IBM DB2 data is often hampered in some cases with time-consuming manual workflows and data formatting errors and poor integration to ERP processes. Let us help you take back control of how you're accessing and updating your IBM DB2 data within workflow processes. WebDocs Forms Management has a citizen-based developer interface, so it can make it easier for your users and your IT staff to customize and build workflows for their departments and minimize the involvement that IT needs to be involved with. In most cases, it is an IT deployed solution and a departmentally managed system. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go through here today. But to get on here, again, my name is Greg Schmidt. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Fortra. I bring over 25 years of comprehensive industry experience, specializing in the document and forms automation area of the Fortra businesses, and then also in the accounts payable and receivable automation, AI-based intelligent document capture automation, robotic process automation, and IBM business intelligence. I have over 2 decades worth of experience working in the IBM report and data distribution solutions. Throughout my career, I have been instrumental in helping companies automate their document and data processes and enabling them to streamline business workflows through strategic planning and cutting-edge technology. My passion truly lies in guiding organizations towards best practices in implementation and solution expansion, maximizing the efficiency and impact of their automation strategies. On the IBM power side of here at Fortra, we are helping customers unleash the full power of their IBM solutions to really solve real world business problems across all the different key areas. We cover security with IBM specific threat detection and compliance tools, keeping systems safe with automated backups and recovery, and preventing bottlenecks through capacity planning. Our monitoring delivers real-time alerts with business intelligence, turns IBM data into dashboards and reports accessible from anywhere. We also streamline operations with scheduling automation, document and workflow automation, and secure creation and delivery of customer presentable documents, all designed to improve efficiency, compliance, and business performance. Here's a quick look at today's agenda. Before we get started, the main topic today is going to be IBM data and making it work smarter for you. Then we'll be talking about how to bring efficiency back to your business processes and workflows inside of there. Then we'll move into a live demonstration on how to build these forms and workflows, along with showing some example forms and workflows. And then if time permits, we'll finish up with some Q&A at the end. So feel free to enter your questions into the chat window, and I will address them towards the end of the webinar if time allows. I will also plan to complete our session in about 30 minutes, but if I do run over and you have to leave to another meeting, you will receive an email after the webinar to the recording that you can rewatch or share with anyone that might have missed this with inside of your organization. All right, let's Start with the topic of business challenges organizations are facing today. Your IBMI and ERP line of business systems are the backbone to your organization that control your business data and processes. And in some cases, your business systems may have forms built in as part of the system that users interface with. But in some cases, your ERP and processes are sometimes hard to change to the exact need of the business process, and sometimes impossible to add and enforce workflow capabilities around how the data is collected within the process. Being able to be nimbler is important to organizations' growth, but also it needs the need for compliance and regulatory purposes is there as well. So you got to be able to, be able to improve all the different processes. So having a forms and workflow solution that you can use to be able to connect to your DB2 data and or your ERP system is a powerful tool for departments and business users across your organization. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these here. So common inefficiencies of manual and disconnected workflows. Starting with duplicate data entry. Employees often re-enter the same data across systems, increasing the risk for human error and wasting time, causing loss of time in this use case with data accuracy issues, lack of real-time visibility, siloed information, right? Disconnected tools and departments leads to fragmented data, making it hard to get, a complete view of the process. Error-prone approvals and handoffs, manually routing forms and documents, that people are filling out. So it can lead to, lost items, missed approvals or outdated versions being processed. That is a truly common scenario that we run into. Efficient exception handling. So without workflow logic, exceptions must be managed by email, phone, or or just a manual walking them around. Compliance risks, right? This is a huge one. Compliance or regulatory risk. Manual processes lack audit capabilities inside of it. So being able to enforce those on certain paths is a huge plus inside of there, and being able to document that and show that. Poor user experience, right? Users get frustrated with inconsistent tools, and disconnected steps and lack of automation. So I always call it employee morale, right? Looking at the employee's process, it's hard for them to follow. So it's very error prone inside of there as well. And scalability. You can't grow that at that point. It's a manual process, so it's very hard to grow and expand those. The next business challenge is, why integrate forms? Why does it matter, right? For inside of here. Now let's break these down a little bit. So real-time data access. So I think this is a huge plus, right? So people want real-time data access. So they can query live data when they're opening a form, right? They can enter a value in, and that can pull that process in there from that standpoint. So all the data is updated all the time, so there's no outdated values. Dynamic field population. So you can have drop-down boxes that cascade down and actually fill other ones. Direct data write back. So you can write back data to a database or process a file out to be processed into the system. So that's huge. So the no re-entry part. Reduced manual entry. So again, going off of that direct data write backs, you reduce that keystroke error. Keystrokes, you reduce errors inside of the process. So you can improve the accuracy and user efficiency at that point. Improve consistency. Data entered into a form is instantly aligned with your DB2 environment, so it can validate certain data as we go through the process, helping ensure integrity across the business systems. Automation ready. It makes it easier to integrate with workflow engines, and also RPA tools to be more of a data-driven process. Again, this is one you're going to hear a lot on there is governance and audit trails. So, compliance and regulatory, being able to track who submitted, when, where, what they did to the document and form, and bring that process in place. And also, a big process here is developer friendly. So being able to have an environment that you can, quickly set up and configure and change if need to. So you'll see this in the demonstration on how easy it is, to work through that process. For today's conversation, I'll be focusing in on the intelligent forms and workflow. But there's all different kinds of use cases inside of here from that standpoint that that organizations have been using a system like this. We have organizations using it for new client onboarding processes and claims processing. Insurance industries are using it for new customers. Filling out information, document collection processes, purchase orders, credit applications. I'll be showing a credit application here today. All these different kinds of things, and internal processes like price change forms internally where they need to get that approval process and go through. But truly, any kind of form process you can think of, down to the simplest form to the most complex kind of structures inside of there. Inside of here, we'll talk a little bit about now. You can now even bring more efficiency back, right, to your IBM data collection strategy and processes with the forms management system like WebDocs Forms Management. You can first restrict who can access the form, and restrict who can access sections of the form, and also who can see it. You can also, have different modules in there. So when we get to the live demonstration, you're going to see a lot of different things inside of the system to be able to show and hide information and sort of guide the users on the creating the process and going through there, like entering in a contract number or entering in a customer number or something like that, or an order number, and then it sort of goes back and fills in that information. But creating forms and creating processes needs to be easy for organizations and users to be able to fill them out and be efficient in the process. Being able to enable forms in your business workflows for that enforcement process, I think is huge, right? Because as you'll see in the demonstration and stuff like that, it's the start of the process. It helps people fill it out, and then they don't really have to worry about filling in on the back end of the data processes. Here's just a slide that talks about bringing efficiencies back to the data collection processes here, and it really goes through sort of that list. I'll just go through them really quickly here, but streamline the forms design. Right, being able to have a design that's really easy to guide them through, and have minimal fields in some cases, right? That each because you might have a form with say 50 fields, but each step only a couple fields need to be filled out inside of a workflow process. You can guide that user to what they need to fill out only. Digital forms creation tool, right? So I was talking about citizen-based developer interface, being able to drag and drop and create. I always call it the 80-20 rule inside of here. 80% of the forms created within an organization don't need any kind of technical knowledge, right? It can just be drag and drop kind of structures. Now there is the 20% in some cases, in some organizations, that they want to do more advanced stuff, then they still have that capability in there. But usually 80-20 rule, 80% is done through the visual designer. Automation and forms distribution, being able to set up automation, be able to say, hey, after this form is completed, send notifications out, send a document out internally, externally, so they have copies of them and save them into the repository at that point. Centralized forms management, so we may be able to maintain that centralized storage location for not only the front end documents, but also the back end documents that have been filled out. So WebDocs Forms Management comes with our WebDocs document management system that allows you to be able to store all that information in there. So if you're currently a WebDocs user, this will bolt on or plug into the WebDocs system itself or if you are in need of a full system, this is the full system. It has the front end forms process and the back end collection process. Standardizing your process, I think, is huge, right? So bringing efficiency back, you want to be able to standardize that, what data is being collected and how it's being collected. Integrating in data into systems. So we're talking about DB2 here today, but the system does connect into other databases as well. So you can have a mixture of databases to be able to connect to and populate that information from. And again, data and security compliance, ensuring that all data collected through the form is handled securely, within compliance standards, right? And, and you want to be able to, do different things like have different access controls and, protect sensitive data for, on the screen and stuff like that. So that gives you that capability. And that sort of leads into that bottom one, training and support, so with a citizen-based developer with the drag and drop, I mean, the training is very valuable to the end user because that they can do it, right? We have a lot of organizations that only deploy this IT-based, but then we have the other side of the coin where a lot of organizations may say, I want to deploy this IT-based, but I want to give the power back to the departments to create their own workflows and create their own forms with certain standards. By implementing these strategies, you can bring back efficiencies to your data collection process. And also workflows inside of there too. So remember when I'm talking about when I say a form, think of a single step workflow, because a form is a single step workflow, but then you can enable multi-step workflows inside of there with business logic to be able to do that. So, by implementing these strategies, you can bring efficiency back to the entire process, and enabling more analysis on the data and utilization and better ways to collect that data. In this diagram, this is sort of the main process, of collecting from a DB2 process here. But really, from a user standpoint, all they're seeing is that first filling out the form, right? So remove all the other stuff behind it, and the user, all they're seeing there, and all the other stuff is automation back there, right? So this diagram really illustrates how the WebDocs Forms Management streamlines and integrates into your DB2 data to automate, data entry, streamline workflows, and store, completed documents like I was talking about earlier. It supports real-time integration with both IBM and other enterprise databases like Microsoft SQL and MySQL. But pretty much any database that you have access to, that you have a driver to, cloud-based or local. Forms capture and data entry is your first step. It starts with the user submitting a form through the WebDocs document management system. These forms are fully customizable, as you'll see here today, to be able to collect structured data such as, like documents like invoices and requests, customer details that might be coming from the business system, real-time database interaction. So we have built-in database connectors that allow you to be able to query those different databases, especially IBM DB2 databases, to be able to pull that information in on. Workflow automation. So we do have a ton of workflow automation that you can do there. Multiple steps. You can have different kinds of rules inside of there to be able to trigger off of, to be able to do that. So rule-driven processes, that's running by the system. Archival and audit readiness, right? After workflow completion, a copy of the form along with its metadata is archived into the WebDocs secure repository. This, centralized archive ensures compliance, security, and quick retrieval of information if you need it. So say 6 months later, you need that information, you can go into the system and grab it within just a few seconds. At the final stage, it could be, I always say customer communication, right? So being able to work with the customer. Maybe there's an email notification that goes out to the customer, or an external customer or an internal customer, right? To an employee to alert them of something, because we have people using this for HR purposes too internally to be able to build forms. So remember that from that standpoint. Think of it as a form gets filled out by a user, goes through an approval process, and then gets submitted. expense reports, anything like that. All right, and I'm going to go through more of this when we go through the live demonstration, so you sort of see the sort of that process flowing through there. Um, but what you're seeing here is a smart rules-based invoice form that streamlines the AP collection process, right? So it could be more of a simple form that guides the end user through the necessary steps. So guiding that user and being able to say, hey, user, this is the process you need to go through to be able to do that. So ensuring that process, and then even embedding a workflow into that to say, hey, once this is submitted, I need to notify someone. So that's one example there from that standpoint. This diagram demonstrates, how the WebDocs Forms Manager integrates with the DB2 database to streamline PO creation and automate back-end workflows. So we can actually call into a database with our database commands in the background to be able, so our rule code inside of here, we can actually embed that into the system to be able to connect and pull that information through. So really nice to be able to pull off of a single field to be able to do that. So, sort of that rule code, leverages that DB2 connector, or I should say database connector. This slide illustrates how a single PO request can deliver, a simple or a complex approval, right? So meaning that, like I was talking about, a single step, a form is a single step workflow. Right? So someone could fill out a form, it gets submitted to a manager, or it could have multiple steps inside of that workflow. So it could say, hey, if it comes in, this PO comes in, someone needs to fill this out, it needs to go to my manager, it needs to go to executive approval if it's over a certain amount. So you can have those different, kind of rule code in here. And this is where I was talking about that 80-20 rule in the beginning a little bit. So this is rule done through a visual rule designer here to be able to design the workflow process. Now, if this was more of something that you would need to use JavaScript for, you can also use JavaScript to be able to enable inside of these different kinds of rule codes. But this one is actually sort of that amount-driven one. If it's equal to or less than, then it needs to go through a certain step. That can be done with the rule, the workflow designer itself. And in this form here, this is one where we're looking at the validate against the DB2 data process, right? So this is a credit application, and I'll show this live here too. This is a credit application that has different kinds of restrictions inside of there to be able to say, hey, if they're at a certain monthly income, we need to be flagged that it needs to go through a workflow process, right? Because that might trigger an event because they're asking to purchase something that's outside of their, $1 million piece of something, right? At that point, or they don't have the funds for it from that standpoint. We can't give them credit approval, but there might be another way to do it so you can send it through the workflow process. You can have notifications, rejections, messages, and all that good stuff inside of there. All right, now let's talk a little bit about I want to get to the live demo here as fast as possible. Get some time here to show you some live solution, but let's just talk a little bit about how the WebDocs Forms Management solution can help you. WebDocs Forms Management is an agile, easy-to-use tool that allows users to be in control of creating and deploying business forms and workflows, and transforming business processes, again, with those workflows, enforcing or with a certain level of enforcement to achieve greater efficiencies inside the business. With its no-code and low-code platform structure, from creating data capture forms and workflows for automation, to more of the dynamic structures inside of there as well. So being able to set up business rules to be able to route things around to different processes once they've triggered that event. This really lowers the effort required by IT and technical resources, and is really giving the power back to the departments within inside of the organization. Or in some cases, if it's just IT deployed, really giving the power back to IT to be able to do faster deployments. WebDocs Forms Management is designed to help organizations streamline operations by focusing on the three pillars: digitizing forms, workflow enforcement, and automation. We truly start with converting outdated paper processes in a lot of cases, right? Or it might be electronic and it's going through email or something like that. But we really want to digitize that front end process so that we can actually enforce the way the data is being filled in and what the data requirements are inside the form, so that we can audit, so we can actually update stuff with this information too. And then there's workflow enforcement, being able to enforce the workflows around these different forms. And then automation, like automatically emailing, automatically sending information out, or automatically creating a fillable PDF in the background. One of the other things, if I have time today, I'll show this really quickly here, but if not, I just want to make sure I mention this, is dashboards. Making dashboards capable of displaying your data, so transparency to the back-end process. So in version 11, there was a dashboard component release that you can actually create dashboards around your different workflows and form processes to be able to display that data. All right, now I'm going to get into the live demonstration, and we're going to go through some of those use cases here. We'll walk through, how we can create these forms and how we can, work inside of workflows. And what I'm going to start with here is a couple of those use cases that we have inside of here, so you can sort of see, the different form structures. So inside of here, I'm a designer, so you can see I can design forms. I can access this information through the web interface. It's all web browser enabled in this case. And you'll see here I have some different forms inside of here. These are forms that, there's signature capture process. There's, different forms and different workflows that I have provided in here. I'm actually going to show you the end result here first. But in this process here, you'll see that I cheated in this one. I got a number up here on top, so I'm actually going to just copy and paste that into here. So in this case here, I have an internal section, I have a customer section. So when I tab out of that field, you'll see that it actually updated that information inside of here from my DB2 database. So now this information could trigger, hey, I need to do an internal signature or attach a signature if I need to, if I have one on file. And then also, once that's completed, step 2 would be to go to the customer. So they can actually get this via email. They can view this contract. They can review the terms. They can, commit to the terms. You see the yellow fields here. So they can come in here and say, yep, I reviewed it. I did this. And yes, I did this. And I want to be able to sign it. So they can actually sign that, document at that point and then send it through. So this is a nice way to be able to sort of sculpt that process, right? And say, hey, we have an internal section here. This is what needs to be done on the internal side. But then also here is my customer section. When the customer gets it, they can view that PDF. They can see the terms and conditions and all the other stuff that they need to be able to do. Now, if you see here up on top, this is in my test mode, right? So I'm actually showing it from not from a deployed model, but from a testing option here. You can actually see that I can actually use a computer. I can actually use to see what it looks like on an iPad and use it on an iPad. I can see what this looks like on a phone and actually use it on the phone to see if it's the right kind of interface and right kind of feel that the user would want to do. Inside of here as well, I want to back up here a little bit too and show you some other ones. But before I do that, I want to show you the workflow process here too. So going into the forms and the workflow. So each workflow has a form or forms associated with it, right? So I have a form here that you can create or update by dragging and dropping these components. Now these components are really nice because they're all drag and drop. I can drag that component in. I can click on that component and I can configure that component over here on the left-hand panel. So we do have that capability there to be able to do that. All different kinds of visual aspects, sections, repeatable tabs, repeating sections, secure sections. One of the things I can do here, you'll see security I was talking about. I can secure a section down so only internal can see it. So, so if this goes to a customer, they don't see that internal section. They see only their customer section. So you have security controls along inside of here as well. So there's a lot of cool things inside of here. There's different kinds of rule code you can do inside of here. So you can actually create rules and configure rules in here. So this is all through the visual designer. So you can actually configure these inside of here. So you can do all those different functions. You can also do workflows. So this is where I was talking about the workflow process. This has 2 steps to it. But if I needed to add another step, I can add a step to it. I can add a send email option. Maybe I want to notify someone, and also different kinds of preconditions. So you can do all those different features there. And I know we're over time here, but I just want to show one more sample so you can sort of see some of this stuff here as well. But we do have forms where, from an integration standpoint, I'm going to go into, I'll just do the expense report one here so you can see this. This is the expense report workflow process. But this could be, hey, I entered my employee number in and it populates the data into it. So you can have forms do different things inside of here, like this one here, and have different kinds of filling out information for the organization. And there's help and hint text. There's all different kinds of guidance you can give users inside of here from that standpoint. Now, again, from the workflow standpoint, you can have different things in there. So if it comes into the system and it comes in as a user one, and then it goes into the manager, and then the manager one can actually, so you can actually put the app manager option in here, so it can actually look at your Active Directory to be able to do that process. So you don't need the hard code information in there from that standpoint. And then we have like assignments. You can assign different users to it if you need to. You can set up different messages inside of here, rejection points, and escalation points. So I can add escalations in here and say if something is not performed by, within, completed by, or completed within a certain amount of time, I can take some actions on that information and reassign tasks, re-notify them, or send them another notification. And there's also reminders so that, every 2 days or every 1 day or every two hours, you can send out notifications for those individuals. But very, very powerful system from that standpoint. And you can see from the list of my forms I have in here, I got some banking examples in here. I got some, internal expense report processes, security and fraud control, processes. If you have some kind of workflow process, PO processes, update and retrieval of databases, so we have all different kinds of, capabilities and, all into different ERP systems as well. So a very, very powerful system to be able to process those through and put them, and have the users update the data inside the business systems, either, like I said, through direct database prompting, or staging tables is more common, and or external XML files where you might read into the system. All right, so for time today, we're not going to go over any questions. I will get back to everyone that did put a question into the chat window. So I will get back to everyone on their questions that they have from today's presentation. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. We hope you learned some helpful information about, how you can make your DB2 data work harder and smarter for your organization. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to our document and forms management sales team and or me, and I'd be happy to schedule a free consultation, live one-on-one demonstration, maybe even work up a form sample of yours or a workflow that you have and go through that different use case with you. Again, you will also receive an email either later today or tomorrow with the recording link to the webinar that you can share or rewatch. If you didn't get to see everything here, you had to jump off quick. But you will get that recording. And again, I want to thank everyone for attending today. Have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week.